In 2002, Michael Jackson did something so quiet, so deeply human, that no one in the media ever reported it. He didn't walk a red carpet. He didn't call a press conference. He didn't want credit. He simply donated a life-saving medicine to a little girl with a rare form of cancer, and what she said to him afterward left everyone in the room in tears. Why did Michael choose her? How did he even find out about her? And what was the message she gave him that would haunt his heart for the rest of his life? This is the story the world never heard. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss our emotional stories about Michael Jackson. San Diego, 2002. The room was painted with bright colors that tried very hard to hide the truth. Butterflies on the wall, paper clouds hanging from the ceiling, a rainbow drawn in chalk above the hospital bed. But none of it could distract from the sound of the machines. 8-year-old Emily Carter lay still beneath a thin white blanket, her body too small for the weight it was carrying. Her mother, Rachel, sat beside her, holding her hand and counting each breath like it was a fragile miracle. The doctor's words from earlier that day echoed in Rachel's mind. The cancer is extremely rare. There's an experimental medication in Europe, but it's not approved here yet. The cost is enormous. Rachel had asked the question anyway. How much time does she have? The doctor had hesitated. Without the medicine, months. Rachel didn't cry in the hospital hallway. She didn't scream. She simply walked into the bathroom, locked the door, and slid down the wall until she couldn't stand anymore. That night, Emily whispered, "Mommy, am I going to die?" Rachel forced a smile. "No, sweetheart, we're going to find a way." But Rachel had no idea how. 2 days later, a social worker named Maria entered the room holding a folded sheet of paper. "I'm so sorry," Maria said softly. "There's a charity that sometimes helps with rare cases. I sent them Emily's file." Rachel nodded. "Thank you." She didn't expect anything to come of it, but someone was reading that file. In a quiet hotel room in Los Angeles, Michael Jackson sat on the edge of his bed, holding Emily's photo. A small girl with thin hair, wide eyes, and a smile that tried to be brave. He turned to his assistant. "How much is a medicine?" Michael asked. "About $800,000, not including transport and treatment." Michael didn't hesitate. "Then we get it." "But Michael," the assistant said, "there are legal issues, import restrictions." Michael raised his hand. "Just make it happen." Within 48 hours, the medication was on its way from Europe. Rachel's phone rang at 6:17 a.m. "Mrs. Carter, this is the hospital. The medicine has been approved. It's been paid for." Rachel dropped the phone. She thought it was a mistake. But it wasn't. Emily received her first dose that afternoon. Rachel later learned the donor was Michael Jackson. And a week later, Michael walked into Emily's room. What happened in that hospital room would break every heart that heard it. And Emily's response would stay with Michael forever. The door to Emily's hospital room opened slowly. Rachel looked up, expecting a nurse. Instead, she froze. A tall figure stepped inside, wearing a black fedora, sunglasses, and a soft smile that carried something gentler than fame. Something human. Michael Jackson. For a moment, no one spoke. Emily's eyes widened. She tightened her grip on the stuffed rabbit pressed against her chest. "Mom," she whispered. "Is that—" Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. Tears flooded her eyes before she could stop them. Michael removed his hat and bent slightly at the waist, careful not to overwhelm the small space with his presence. "Hi, Emily," he said softly. "May I come in?" Emily nodded, barely breathing. Michael walked to the side of her bed and knelt so he was at eye level. He didn't speak for a moment. He just looked at her, really looked, as if she were the most important person in the world. "I heard you're very brave," Michael said. Emily swallowed. "I try." Michael smiled. "That's more than most grown-ups can say." Rachel couldn't move. Her heart pounded as she watched her daughter's world suddenly expand in ways she never imagined. Michael reached into his jacket and pulled out a small silver star pin. "This is for you." It's a bravery star. Only very special people get them. Emily took it carefully, her fingers trembling. Thank you. He sat beside her bed, his voice low and calm, asking about her favorite cartoons, her favorite songs, whether she liked animals. He listened to every answer as if nothing else existed. After a while, Rachel found her voice. Mr. Jackson, I don't know how to thank you. Michael turned to her. His expression was gentle but serious. You already did, he said. You love her. Rachel broke down. Later, when the nurse came in to check Emily's vitals, she paused, stunned by who was in the room. Michael stood and greeted her politely, asking questions about Emily's treatment, her progress, her pain levels. He memorized every detail. When they were alone again, Emily whispered, Are you the one who sent the medicine? Michael nodded. Emily stared at him for a long time. Why? Michael hesitated, then said, Because I know what it feels like to be scared, and nobody should face that alone. Emily reached out and held his hand. It doesn't hurt as much when you're here. Michael's throat tightened. Over the next several weeks, Michael returned again and again, sometimes with balloons, sometimes with books, sometimes just with his presence. He sang quietly to her when the pain was too much. He told her stories. He made her laugh when she was too weak to smile. Rachel watched the life return to her daughter's eyes. The medication began working. Slowly, uncertainly, but it was working. Doctors whispered the word hope for the first time in months. One evening, after Michael had stayed longer than planned, Emily tugged on his sleeve. Can I tell you a secret? Michael leaned closer. Of course. Emily's voice was barely audible. When I was really sick, I used to talk to God at night. Michael closed his eyes. What did you say? Emily smiled. I told him if I didn't get better, it was okay, but I asked him to take care of my mommy. Michael couldn't speak. Then Emily added, But now I asked him to take care of you too. Michael's chest ached. Outside the room, Rachel leaned against a wall and cried. Not from fear this time, but from something that felt almost like gratitude too big for her body. Yet even as Emily began to improve, the doctors warned Rachel. The cancer is aggressive. We don't know how long this medicine will hold it back. Emily didn't know that part. Michael did, and that knowledge would change the way he looked at every moment he spent with her. Because he already feared what the world would take from this little girl, and from himself. What Emily would give him in return would leave him unprepared for the ending that was coming. The autumn light streamed through the hospital windows, casting soft golden stripes across the floor of Emily's room. Outside, leaves drifted slowly from the trees, unaware of the quiet battles being fought inside the walls of the children's oncology wing. Emily sat up in bed for the first time in days. It was a small movement, but for Rachel it felt like a miracle. Michael was there when it happened. He had arrived quietly, as he always did, without cameras, without announcement. He wore a soft blue shirt and held a book under his arm, but he dropped it the moment he saw Emily trying to push herself upright. Hey, he said gently, hurrying to her side. Easy, superstar. Emily laughed, a sound Rachel hadn't heard in months. I wanted to see the window, Emily said. The sun looks different today. Michael adjusted her pillows until she was comfortable. He sat beside her, his voice low and calm. The sun always looks different when you decide to notice it. Emily studied him. You talk funny. Michael smiled. I talk carefully. They spent the morning coloring pictures. Emily insisted on drawing Michael with a crooked crown and a cape. You're the king, she said. Michael shook his head. Today you are. Rachel watched in the chair in the corner, her heart swelling and breaking at the same time. Later that day, Emily grew quiet. Michael noticed immediately. What's wrong? He asked. Emily twisted her blanket between her fingers. The medicine helps, but I still feel the bad stuff sometimes. Michael nodded. That's okay. It doesn't mean you're losing. Emily looked at him seriously. What if I do lose? Michael hesitated. Then he took her hand. Then we make sure the world remembers how brave you were. Emily smiled faintly. Promise? Michael nodded. I promise. That night, after Emily fell asleep, the doctor spoke privately with Rachel and Michael in the hallway. She's responding to medication, he said, but the cancer is extremely unpredictable. We're doing everything we can. Rachel's knees nearly buckled. Michael held her arm. Later, when they returned to Emily's room, she was awake. I heard you talking, Emily whispered. Rachel froze. Michael sat beside her. What did you hear? Emily looked at the ceiling. That I might not get better. Rachel began to cry. Michael squeezed Emily's hand. Listen to me. However long your story is, it matters. Emily turned her head and looked at him. Then can I ask you something? Anything. Will you remember me? Michael's eyes filled. For the rest of my life. Emily smiled. Over the next weeks, Emily and Michael formed a routine. They played quiet games. He sang when she was scared. She asked him about his childhood. He told her stories of his brothers, of stages, of dancing in socks on kitchen floors. One evening, Emily whispered, If I get better, I want to dance like you. Michael laughed. When you get better. She grinned. Okay, when... But the nights became harder. Emily's pain returned more often. The medication slowed the cancer, but it didn't stop it. One night, Emily woke crying. Michael was there. I'm scared, she said. Michael held her hand. So am I. Emily whispered, Don't be. And then she said something that Michael would never forget. If I go first, I'll wait for you. Michael closed his eyes, and in that moment, he knew the ending of the story would break him. Winter arrived early that year. The trees outside Emily's hospital window stood bare, their branches thin and fragile against a gray sky. Snow pressed gently against the glass, melting into small rivers that traced their way downward like quiet tears. Emily's condition had changed. The medicine was still in her system, still doing what it could, but the cancer was no longer listening. Rachel noticed it first in the mornings, when Emily no longer asked for crayons, when her voice had lost the brightness that once carried through the room. Then the doctors noticed it too, in the scans and the numbers, in the long pauses before speaking. Michael noticed it in her eyes. They no longer looked toward the window. They looked inward. One afternoon, Michael arrived to find Emily asleep, her breathing shallow, her face pale. Rachel stood near the bed, her hands folded, her lips trembling. The doctor stepped into the hallway with Michael. The medicine bought time, he said softly, but the cancer is spreading again. We are approaching the limits of what we can do. Michael leaned against the wall. How long? He asked. The doctor hesitated. Weeks, maybe less. Michael closed his eyes. When he returned to the room, Emily was awake. She looked at him for a long moment before speaking. They told you, didn't they? Michael knelt beside her bed. Yes. Emily's voice was calm. Is it almost my turn? Rachel sobbed quietly. Michael took Emily's hand. You're not alone. Emily nodded. I know. You're here. Over the following days, Emily grew weaker. Her hair had thinned. Her small hands trembled when she tried to hold her pencil. Michael stayed longer each visit. Sometimes he didn't leave at all. He brought her a small music player. Whenever it hurts, he told her, play this. Emily smiled. Your songs make the bad thoughts go away. One night, Emily whispered, Do you remember what I said about waiting for you? Michael nodded, his throat tight. Emily continued, If I'm not here tomorrow, I don't want you to be sad forever. Michael's voice broke. I don't know how not to be. Emily reached for his cheek. Then be sad for me, but be happy for the kids who get to hear your songs. Michael held her hand against his heart. I don't want you to go, he whispered. Emily closed her eyes. I don't want to leave. The machines hummed steadily. Rachel watched the two of them, her heart splitting open. The next morning, Emily didn't wake up when the sun rose. Her breathing slowed. The nurse called the doctor. Michael stood beside Rachel, one hand on her shoulder, the other holding Emily's. Emily's eyes opened once more. She looked at Michael. "You came," she whispered. "I'm here," he said. She smiled faintly. "Sing." Michael leaned closer and sang softly, a lullaby from his childhood, barely louder than a breath. Emily listened. Her fingers tightened around his. Then they loosened. The room fell silent. Rachel collapsed over the bed. Sobbing, Michael remained still, his forehead resting against Emily's small hand. He whispered, "Wait for me." The world outside the window continued moving, but inside that room, something beautiful and terrible had ended, and Michael would carry that goodbye for the rest of his life. The hospital room remained unchanged long after Emily's breathing had stopped. The machines were silent now. The snow outside continued to fall. The world, cruelly, kept moving. Rachel's cries filled the room, raw, broken, unstoppable. She clung to her daughter's small body as if love alone could bring warmth back into it. Nurses stood quietly at the door, eyes wet, unwilling to interrupt the sacred grief unfolding inside. Michael did not move. He remained at the bedside, holding Emily's hand long after it had gone still, his face pale, his eyes locked on her as if refusing to accept what had happened. She had promised she would wait for him, and he had promised he would remember her. Now the world felt unbearably empty. Eventually, a nurse touched his shoulder gently. "Mr. Jackson, we need to prepare her." Michael nodded, but his body did not respond. His mind was somewhere far away, lost inside every moment he had shared with the little girl who had taught him more about courage than all the stages in the world ever had. Rachel finally lifted her head. Her voice was barely audible. She didn't want to be alone. Michael swallowed hard. She wasn't. She won't ever be. They stood together as the nurses began their work. Michael turned toward the window, unable to watch. The falling snow blurred into streaks of white as his eyes filled with tears he no longer tried to hide. That night, Michael did not return to his hotel. He sat in the hospital chapel until morning, his head bowed, hands clasped, whispering Emily's name over and over again like a prayer. In the weeks that followed, Michael changed. Those closest to him noticed it immediately. He laughed less. He slept little. He spent hours alone, staring out windows, listening to the same songs Emily had loved. He carried her bravery star in his pocket. Whenever he felt overwhelmed, he would touch it and remember the way she smiled when she said, "When I get better, I'm going to dance like you." Michael attended Emily's funeral quietly, hidden beneath a hat and dark glasses. He stood at the back of the small church, unseen, listening as Rachel spoke about her daughter's courage, about the man who had walked into their lives and given them hope when none existed. When the service ended, Michael approached Rachel. She took his hands. "She loved you," Rachel whispered. "You were her hero." Michael shook his head. "She was mine." He placed a bravery star in Emily's casket. "She won't need it where she's going," he said softly. Rachel broke down again. Months passed. The world continued to celebrate Michael Jackson, the legend, the icon, the performer. But inside Michael, Emily's absence lived quietly, constantly. He visited children's hospitals more often after that. He never spoke Emily's name publicly, but every child he met carried a piece of her story. One night, alone in his room, Michael took out a notebook and wrote, "If love could heal everything, Emily would still be here. But if courage could change the world, she already has." Years later, when Michael himself left this world, those who knew him best said there was always one memory he never spoke of without his voice breaking. The little girl with the rare cancer. The medicine that saved her for a while. This story stays with us because it speaks a truth that most people spend their entire lives trying to understand. Sometimes love arrives not to save us from loss, but to give meaning to it. When Michael Jackson chooses to help Emily, he is not acting as a superstar or a savior. He is acting as a human being who recognizes fear because he has lived with it himself. His kindness is not loud. It is quiet, almost invisible. He does not announce it to the world. He does not turn it into a performance. He simply steps into the life of a child who is running out of time and sits beside her as the world begins to fade. That choice alone is what makes the story so powerful. Real love does not seek witnesses. It only seeks presence. Emily's character is the emotional center of the entire narrative. She represents a part of all of us that is still innocent, still hopeful, still asking impossible questions with brave eyes. Her illness is cruel, but her response to it is not. She does not become angry at the world. She becomes tender with it. She worries about her mother. She asks if she will be remembered. She offers comfort to Michael when she should be the one receiving it. In her final days, the roles are reversed. The dying child becomes the emotional anchor, and the grown man becomes a frightened one. This reversal is what quietly shatters the reader's heart. It reminds us that courage does not come from strength of body, but from strength of spirit. Michael, throughout the story, is not portrayed as untouchable or invincible. He is deeply affected by Emily's presence. He begins as the one offering hope, but he ends as the one being taught how to face loss. Emily's promise to wait for him is not just a child's fantasy. It is the story's emotional key. It is a moment when death stops being only an ending and becomes something softer, something less final. That single sentence changes the way Michael experiences grief. He does not simply lose Emily. He carries her forward in his music, in his silence, in the quiet visits to hospitals, in the way he looks at the world afterward. The sadness of the ending is what gives the story its lasting power. Emily does not survive. The medicine does not save her forever. And yet the story is not about failure. It is about the fragile beauty of what exists in between. Those weeks of laughter, of whispered conversations, of songs sung beside a hospital bed. That is the true miracle. The story teaches that even when we cannot change the ending, we can change the meaning of everything that happens before it. What hurts the most is not Emily's death, but the way Michael carries that goodbye for the rest of his life. The bravery star in his pocket, the hospitals he visits afterward, the moments of quiet where her memory returns. These are the invisible scars of love. This is what real loss looks like. Not screaming, not collapsing, but moving through life with a softer voice, a heavier heart, and a deeper understanding of what truly matters. And yet, despite the sadness, the story does not leave us empty. It leaves us awakened. It reminds us that time is not what makes a relationship meaningful. Presence is. Emily did not have a long life, but she lived fully in the moments she was given. Michael did not save her life, but he saved her fear. And in doing so, she saved a part of him as well. In the end, this story stays with us because it mirrors our own human experience. We love knowing that even in the face of death, something pure and gentle can exist. That even when we cannot hold on to someone, we can carry them inside us forever. And that sometimes the most important thing we will ever do is simply sit beside someone who is afraid and let them know they are not alone. That is why this story does not fade when it ends. It continues quietly inside the heart of everyone who reads it.